It's time to rethink how we approach cybersecurity because the reality is modern cyber attackers are already past your initial defenses. ExtraHop helps your security team find and eradicate advanced threats before real damage is done. Protect your enterprise and customers with better defense. Learn more about how ExtraHop stops advanced threats at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP. Monitoring and maintaining compliance is a never-ending struggle with a high price of failure. Firemon helps customers meet complex and varying compliance requirements. Firemon has fully customizable reporting, analytics, assessments, and dashboards to meet the compliance needs of any organization. With Firemon, compliance reports take a tenth of the time, and real-time continuous compliance eliminates the anxiety and headaches of audit preparation. Improve security outcomes by improving security operations with Firemon. Visit securityweekly.com/Firemon to learn more. Cybercriminals are working overtime. Last year in the fourth quarter alone, phishing attacks disguised as COVID testing information increased by 521%. Barracuda has identified 13 types of email threats and how cybercriminals use them to steal money from your company or personal information from your employees and customers. Find out about the 13 email threat types and how Barracuda can provide complete email protection for your teams, your customers, and your reputation. Get your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque and Ben Carr. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on your RSA Conference 2022 full conference pass. RSA Conference will be live in San Francisco June 6th to 9th. Security Weekly will be there in full force, delivering real-time live coverage and interviewing some of the event's top speakers and sponsors. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC 2022 and use the code 52UCyber. We hope to see you there. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover on one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. We review those suggestions often and will reach out to you once reviewed. All right, gentlemen, let's get into articles. Number one. Now, when I pull in leadership articles, I don't just focus on the CISO. I look at all leadership articles. And I thought this was an interesting one around successful CEOs navigate these three phases of leadership. And as I was reading these, I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been there. Oh, yeah, I know that.
Right. Absolutely, 100%. You know, and just to kind of kick this off, within the first couple of paragraphs, it was very telling. And I knew I was going to enjoy the article right away because it kicks off and it says something to the effect of, in my 20 plus years of experience from, a new hire to the CEO, I've never seen a company reach its potential and under anything less than exemplary leadership. That's telling, right?
Yes.
And one of the other telling terms is they say later on, usually the very last person to realize when leadership is starting to deteriorate is the leader themselves. So it just shows the need, number one, right? The need for great leadership and to be focused on leadership when you are the head of a department or the head of a company, but also that level of introspection and the need to have people around you who you allow to have open, trustworthy conversations, right? Because that's where you start getting the intel, those, I'll call them, the lead measures for leadership, right? The intel so you can pivot and not go down that path of being totally disconnected and not knowing when your leadership style is starting to fail.
Yeah. What I liked about these three phases, I've been almost in all of them, not as much phase 3, I guess, at times, right? But you come in fresh, new, as the new leader for a group or whatever, and you're cautious a little bit, right? Because you haven't built credibility with the leadership team. Anything you do potentially kind of sticks to you in decisions, right? And so that creates a very interesting spot for a leader, right? And if you come in too fast and too hard, like right to phase 2, it creates a lot of friction in the organization early on. And I've seen it because I've kind of been in that role. Like, I wanted to shake things up. Like, sometimes when a new leader comes in, you want to shake some things up because you know what they've been doing is wrong, right? But you gotta balance that.
You do.
Because then when you transition into phase 2, where, okay, I've earned my stripes, I've got the trust, there's nothing I can do wrong, right? And that's when, things get a little interesting, because it can take you down number 3 very quick, which means, you've been there too long, you don't realize it's time to go.
Yeah.
Now, I typically identify my exit before I hit phase 3. I'm self-aware enough that I know when phase 2 is kind of at its end and it's time to move on, and I have in my career. I mean, you can look at my LinkedIn history. You'll know when I was at the end of phase 2, I pulled the parachute and went to the next one. So
it's a science though, Matt, because every leader goes through what I consider a confidence crisis, right? There are weeks that you go by and you're like, man, am I making an impact? And you really question yourself. But that's, you go through that. It's being able to balance and know the difference and know yourself well enough to know the difference between that temporary confidence crisis and hitting phase 3, right? That's the science. That's really knowing yourself.
A lot of this is the self-awareness issue, right? It's really understanding more about who you are and who the company is than, what your leadership style is, or how you integrate, or how you work well with people. I mean, you have to understand, like, if you're in the right spot, and if things have gotten to the point where you are in phase 3 and you've got to start, or you're coming up on it, you've got to move on, right? And I think the same thing for that phase 1. Like, I think it's knowing your personality type and knowing how to balance against, look, I want to start making changes, but it's not the right time yet. I have to give it some more time, right? I have to, at least give that perception that I'm gathering more information, even if the result is you still knew what the problems were and how to fix them early on. Sometimes it's about getting everybody else to buy into the fact that you spent the time to figure that out, and we're doing your due diligence as opposed to just making snap decisions.
Yeah. No, that's 100% dead on. It's you need that discovery phase to fully know current state and to bring your A game to the table later on. And the A game may just be, like you said, showing that you're doing your diligence and not making, snap decisions right away, even though you do know that they're the right decision to make, showing the team that you're taking your time and you're actually digging in to be confident in that decision.
Yeah. I always know whether I'm still providing value or not, because I know that if I'm not, it's time to go. Like if I can't make an impact anymore, it's time to move on. And then that's always the way I've kind of, figured out when it was time for me to transition to the new thing. And then, then you start it all over again. You go back through phase 1 and into phase 2. And, for most people, they'll go through that cycle multiple times, for sure.
Yeah. And to Ben's point earlier, it's about knowing you, right? It's because, one of the last statements is the root of the solution is to reestablish trust in yourself and your abilities, right? That kicks in your confidence, that encourages you to have that confident decision making, and it always gives you that level of gut check as to why you wanted to be a leader in the first place. So it's knowing yourself and being confident in yourself.
Yep. So the second article ties into this one a little bit for me, because this one talks about keeping sight of your company's strategy for the long haul. And they give a couple really good examples. They give the Adobe example, and it's a very similar example that I had at Tenable when I was there. When I went into Tenable to run strategy, I told the founders early on, I said, we've got to move to a subscription-based model. Perpetual with annual maintenance was not the route we needed to go. We needed to convert that revenue into subscription revenue, and I kind of pushed the organization through that, similar to the Adobe story here, because it created a recurring revenue model that you could predict revenue off of, especially as we're getting ready to go public. This is 2014, the IPO is 2017. It gave us time, and I warned them. I said it won't be pretty early on, but now's the time to take the hit while we're a private company before we go public, because once you're a public company and you try to make a change like this, like in Adobe's case, you take a hit for a couple of years. You take a revenue hit, people lose confidence in you, but long term, if you stuck with them, they're actually better off now than they were. But I wanted to get Tenable through that transition early on. So we planned this over a 3 to 4 year period, that by the time we went public, we were in a much better way. And this is what this talks about, is how do you actually keep that kind of strategic vision in mind as you plan out and continue to move the organization forward, because yes, it can be painful in the first couple of years.
Yeah. And keeping your eye on the ball and steadfast on the execution is where most organizations fail. You can build the plan, you can build a wonderful plan. The hardest part is to execute against it. And I've always subscribed, and you guys have heard this before, to 4 disciplines of execution, right? Where those 4 disciplines are: focus on your important goals, act on those lead measures, make sure you're keeping score because you want to make sure you know you're winning the game. That's the whole lead measures mentality. And then make sure you're encouraging accountability across your organization to hit these goals, right? By having a cadence, by always looking to the strategy, because we run 1,000 miles an hour. We can let the run and the keep the lights on take over and never focus on that plan. The key is to focus on the plan. Put that focus time, guard the focus time, make sure you're doing the execution pieces.
And I would extend this to say, like, you have to have the vision, right? You have to have the goal that you're trying to get to. And I've seen a lot of companies and organizations falter in that they're not setting out an effective vision and they're not leading with a strategy that people can muster and align to. And so I think that goes down from the company to the org, to the individual level. Is you have to know where you're heading. So over that period of time, you can course correct and make sure, you are measuring those goals and targeting them. And if you get off track, you can get back pretty quickly, right? I've just seen organizations falter and stumble because nobody seems to know why they're going in the direction they're going. And so you've got people going in 6 different directions. And that lack of alignment and trust and vision can really be disruptive. And so the companies that I've seen that have done really, really well and been really successful, really focused goal, really focused orientation on results. And that just translates into people understanding what they need to do on a day-to-day basis to execute.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's aligning to the top. And if there aren't definitive corporate goals, business goals at the top, as a leader in the organization, start having that conversation to try to get some in place. Create some type of strategic committee within your organization, working with your CEO or your CFO, because that is the most important piece. Having your business units aligned to that higher level corporate goal or goals, right? And then having their business unit goals aligned to those. Now you can actually start showing how you're helping move the needle for the entirety of the organization. And
I would posit that it's not just, I think a lot of corporations get caught up, and Jason and Matt, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Like their goals, everybody has OKRs or goals, right? But those goals can sometimes be like, sell more stuff. Like,
right.
So that was where I was going, Ben. That's where I was going.
That's a revenue target, right?
The key to the goals are, number one, they need to be achievable. And secondly, they need to be measurable. And if you're not defining them to that level, you fail. Yeah. You fail.
And the only metric is not revenue. So we're going through this right now. Like Cyber Risk Alliance. Like, we know what we want to be. We want to be a data platform.
Yep.
But it takes time to build that model. And so, yes, you do iterative updates on certain product lines, like our account-based marketing, for example, right? We're going through iterations. We just made some changes to our Webcast and eSummit program. We're making iterative changes, all to keep us on track to get to that vision of being a data platform. But what you can't do is you can't let sales be the tail that wags the dog sometimes, because I look at the global kind of situation and numbers. I don't look at individual product lines on my side, right? So I'm not worried that I'm off revenue on this side. I look at the aggregate number, right? But sales can, and sometimes do, where they're like, oh wait, our webcast revenue is down. We got to go sell a bunch of one-off webcasts. Well, it doesn't keep you on track for the vision. It's just these little things get in the way that create bumps in the road. And from a vision perspective, you want them continuing to sell the integrated program, right? Like, sell the vision. The rest will come, but we do tend to fall into these revenue traps.
Yeah. No, 100% agreed. And, that's why I think having visibility across the entire organization and having that transparency for all the business units so they can see how everyone collaboratively is moving the needle. That's why I said, in 40X, it's keep a scoreboard, right? Keep a scoreboard at the highest levels, keep a scoreboard at your business unit level. Now you know how you're helping move the needle, and over, moving the needle as a corporate entity as well. So it's having that level of transparency and keeping score. You need to know you're winning the game.
Right. Next article. Cybersecurity is IT's job, not the board's, right? It's a great little article. I loved it.
I hate the premise of even the title, though, Matt.
Yeah,
I know.
It's not even IT's job. Like, okay, let's assume it's not the board's job.
Right.
So the short answer is wrong.
Well, and it does talk about aspects of this in the article. Like, yes, as boards of directors, you can be held liable, right?
Absolutely.
And what I thought was interesting, though, is the 10 questions boards should ask to protect against cyber attacks. Like, if you are a board member, like, look at these questions. Like, take a look. What are the most important assets? Do you have cybersecurity expertise on the board? Like, there's some just basic fundamental things that I think board members need to educate themselves on to be prepared to ask the right questions at the board level. And, it does,
Matt,
it does lay it out.
Don't you think these questions, the 10 questions the board should ask against cyber attacks, I thought these were well-intended, but they still got a little specific for a board. Like, what is our cybersecurity and data protection plan? The better question is, do we have a cybersecurity and data protection plan? And when did you last test it? And what were the results of the test? Like, that's a more board-oriented question than explain me the plan, because they're not going to get the plan.
That is true. I think it may be a little specific just because they wanted to make sure it was clear that, you should ask aspects about your plan and make sure you know what's going on. I know our board has asked some of these questions. That's because we also have a CISO that sits on our board, right?
Yeah.
So part of it is we do have security expertise sitting at the board, and so one of our board members, being a CISO, does ask some of these questions, right? And so you could, if you had the cybersecurity expertise on your board, but you're right. For most boards that don't have that expertise, some of these might be a little too deep.
Yeah. We're just trying to convey. We try to reinforce that all the time, conveying the right information to the executives and to the board. And I just think this article goes a little bit in the wrong direction. Although, as you said, I think well-intentioned, and their point of, making sure you know what type of program you have is super important. Do you have a program, right? How well is it run? That's ultimately, I think, what the board needs to get at.
Yeah, I feel the same way, Ben. I mean, these are very tactical questions. They need to be geared more to strategic. Because if I handed these to a board member, they'd say, I'm not going to ask that question. That's too tactical for me. That's too in the weeds.
Yep. Why some CISOs fail, Jason? Reporting structure?
Yeah, a little bit.
Do you understand the business? Do you know how to negotiate across the business units? Like, are you actually part of the executive team or not? Yeah. We've talked about this a lot, obviously, on the show.
100%, right? It's still the stigma of cybersecurity leader being a technology leader and not a business leader, right? A technology focused leader and not a risk manager, and that's why I've always said, start becoming a risk management professional, or you'll end up reporting to one as a CISO, right? We have to get in the mindset of aligning to the business, influencing the business, educating the business, learning the business. Now,
and look, I think from a CEO, like, one of the best things that someone could do, if you're a CEO and you're saying, look, I don't have the time or the knowledge, or I need this person. He's a really great CISO, but he doesn't have as much business acumen as I'd like. Who on your executive staff are you assigning as a mentor to that
mentor?
CISO?
You got it.
To bring them along, right? Like, make a partner with somebody else on the E-staff. And look, I'm going to tell you, that's transformationally going to change the way that CISO interacts with the rest of the team.
Agreed. Yeah, it's finding the right person with the attitude and aptitude to get to that level, and then building their leadership skills, building their business acumen, right, and getting them to that point. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I did an advisory call this morning for a new startup, and it was interesting. We were talking about the CISO role and in kind of ownership and in cloud and in AppSec worlds and just the environment we're in. And he made this comment. He goes, yeah, like none of the CISOs now are technical. That's the CTO. All the CISOs, we're talking to now. This is primarily for financial institutions. He said they're all business people. They're not technical. And so you are seeing shifts in certain industries where this has been pretty adopted, but not in others yet, because there's still that stigma of more the technician on the CISO side.
That's it. So now I say, whose job is it to educate these CEOs and board members to shift their mindset? And I think it's folks like us. We need to be out there. We need to be joining advisory boards. We need to be joining committees. We need to be doing things to get that level of communication and education to these CEOs and board members.
Yeah, for sure. JetBlue creates a culture of security. Great article on how JetBlue approached their Security Champions program. Just apply that to their flight status and cancellation policies, and they might be a little better off with their customers. A few complaints this weekend over a bunch of canceled flights.
Yeah, they need a customer success champions program.
Exactly.
Look, right. I love this. I love the article, right? Because I think, obviously, JetBlue really committed 600 employees. That's a great commitment, I think, for a security champions program. But I've been doing this for years now, and I think it's really key to a successful program is to have a great security champions program embedded at all levels of the business. But one of the comments they make here is it can't just be like you expect them to go off and do stuff, right? You've got to engage. You've got to make sure they're getting, information back. They're engaged with the team. There's a draw for them being involved in security, not just a push for, hey, go roll this out to all your individual teams.
Yeah. It's giving them a mission, right? Educating them on the importance to what they're doing and to the entirety of the organization. They had put in there, and this is where you work with other business unit leaders, because most of the time these security champions aren't reporting to you. So it's work with their leadership to say what potential career paths are in front of them that this could help with. And then the other piece was, I read the lessons learned, right? And high levels of communication, right? Always communicating back and forth. And then don't focus too much on just metrics and reporting, right? Don't focus too much. Still do it, but don't make it all about that.
I would tie this back to one of the earlier articles about vision, right? Like if you lay out the vision, then and give them the task of like what you're trying to achieve in the long run, and then treat this almost like a DEI initiative where you could say, I'm going to bring in somebody from marketing or somebody from baggage handling that has no concept of really security and say, like, this is the vision, what we're trying to do. I gather that you're going to get a lot more things that you weren't aware of and you would have never thought about for your security program. Even if it happens to be a physical thing, at least you could funnel that back to the right person and say, look, we weren't aware of this. This is a problem for the organization. We have visibility and we can address it. So get that different mode of thinking into your security organization outside of, the normal track of people that you bring along for the ride.
Right. And Ben, and then what does that do? You're getting intelligence from around the organization that isn't necessarily always in your quote unquote wheelhouse, but now you're stepping up and you're getting that intel and you're becoming a corporate risk management leader, right? Because if you're getting physical security process issues, all of those issues that may be bubbling up and you're kind of controlling the conversation and the remediation, now you've aligned with the business and you're helping.
And when you bring that back to the E-staff and you say, hey, look, here's something that's not in my wheelhouse, but I think it's concerning for the business and I think we could impact revenue by doing X. Well, you're going to be looked at it in a much different way than just bringing, hey, we've got a certain number of vulnerabilities and we got to patch them this month.
Got it.
What I thought was interesting is that the two top risks they identified in this report is narcotics trafficking and baggage theft. Both decreased by implementing this program. When you say not in your wheelhouse, like
CISO's wheelhouse, right? Come on, that's in the CISO's wheelhouse.
We all handle narcotics. Narcotics trafficking, number one requirement on the resume.
All day.
You've done requirements.
Right. And so the benefits, though, to the overall risk reduction for the airline goes up because of this program, because now people are more aware and they're more tuned into this kind of stuff. So there are other benefits than just a security benefit, back to the original point. But I just thought it was interesting. Security wasn't one of their top 2 risks,
right.
but yet they're seeing improvement there. Yeah.
Good call out.
Apply that to flight cancellations and you'll be all set. All right, our last article. How to get cybersecurity insurance and keep costs as low as possible. Yeah, right.
Good luck. Good luck.
Wait a minute. What?
Go back to 2010. That's how you get cyber insurance.
Yeah, right.
I mean, this is an Inc. article, by the way, right? And Inc. is putting this out there, and I'm like, do you not know what's going on with the cyber insurance market right now? Do you have no understanding of what's happening with these policies? And then you put out this article like, oh yeah, you just do these 3 steps and you're good.
Yeah. No, I mean, I read the article. I'm like, they don't know the disruption happening here. Like, there's so much disruption happening that, covering what you need to qualify, how to keep your insurance, and lowering your premiums. Because, that's easy.
Well, look, I mean, if you want to think about how the market's changed, right, from a cyber insurance standpoint, I believe it was Target finally settled with their insurer, and the insurer had to pay under their general liability policy. Now, that's because that's all been written out of general liability now, like years ago. But when that breach happened, it was still in their general liability policy. Things have changed so much, since that point. Like even if you have a specific cyber policy, there are a ton of exclusions now, right? And the value you're paying for that has just gone through the roof. So I just thought this was a little out of sync with the reality of where the cyber market is for insurance.
Yep. No, I agree. I had to pull it in here. We've covered this so much that I'm like, you're just kind of missing the point. Like, even if you do this stuff, you're still not going to get a policy. It's probably going to get canceled if you have one. Like, it's great steps, but what you're telling people is not realistic in the current environment we're in with ransomware. It's not.
Nope.
Yeah, and I think the market is ripe for somebody to come in and actually partnership with monitoring to be able to only insure those assets that are adequately protected by monitoring that you can tell on a continuous basis. So you get compromised, you have ransomware, and that specific asset didn't happen to be under coverage at that specific point in time, coverage is going to get denied. That's the only way these people are going to be able to value these policies moving forward at the valuations that need to occur.
Yeah. I mean, insurance providers are going to start, and I'm starting to see the conversations in some organizations doing this, providing tools as part of their program.
Yep.
You get insured.
Well, AIG already does it.
You get a net SIM-SOC partner. You get EDR. You get all of these things with your insurance. You're getting tools.
Yeah, AIG was doing that a few years ago. They were actually, as part of their policy, there were certain products that they were providing as part of the coverage.
Yep.
You could see more of that, Jason. Like, you have to have these things implemented. Heck, you might see MSSPs partner with cyber insurance to create a managed offering with cyber bundled in it, because then you get the monitoring and the visibility back to the insurers to decide whether certain claims potentially would be covered or not. I mean, I could see that as kind of the next evolution.
And that just helps them reduce risk at that point because they're getting all the intel.
The model exists. We see that in the residential market, right? With auto insurance, where they're actually putting a monitor on your OBD2 port of your car. And if you drive, within certain criteria, you get a deduction on the rate of your policy. Like, I could certainly see that model being rolled out. And here's an AIG box to put in, and we want all the monitoring data back, right? To ascertain and make sure that we can actually cover your insurance.
Yeah. Crazy. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you, Jason, for holding down the fort last week. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.